What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Comically Boston Breakdown episode. I'm your host, Big Cam, and today we are talking about the penultimate episode of Daredevil Born Again, episode 8 of season 1, titled Isle of Joy. More like Isle of Chaos and Death, but, you know, Isle of Joy. You know, most of the time I watch these episodes, I read the title and I'm like, okay. And throughout the episode, I'm trying to figure out why it's called the title. And the whole episode I was like, Isle of Joy, there is no joy in this episode. Like, it is Isle of Death and corruption and chaos and all that shit. But coming off of last week, Muse got shot and killed by Heather as he was trying to kill her, and Daredevil came in and tried to save her, and she was in the hospital last time we checked, but Buck killed Luca, saving Fisk at the end of last episode. Oh, thank you, Buck. And we don't really know where Fisk and Vanessa stand after last episode. So we figure out a little bit more of where their footing is this episode. And we figure out where Heather and Matt are after this episode, heading into the finale next week. Very, very good episode. I was thoroughly impressed. But just briefly here, I want to touch on a couple of posters that probably won't be able to get used over the next week. Then some of these are fan-made, I believe. I feel like this one was fan-made, and it's like got the lawyer statue of the balancing scales of justice, and it's got the Daredevil baton wrapping around her and getting thrown towards camera. That one was cool. Here's just a simple black and red Daredevil Born Again. I like that one, kind of like it was graffiti art, you know, sketched. Of course, Bullseye comes back this episode, and we get to know more about what Ben Poindexter's been up to, but here's like a fan-made poster of Matt and Bullseye's fight from the first episode of the series, and this is definitely fan-made, and I just liked how Bullseye's eyes all red. But the last one here, remembering Hunter Doohan, the Muse, and his like weird little poster here, but with the two sides of him, with just the regular kid and then the Muse mask, dripping in blood. Muse underused, okay used, but I feel like underused. Could have been used more, could have been used better, but very, very good nonetheless villain, you know, for even just that half of beginning of season, you know what I mean? Like, I really like Muse. But jumping into this episode, we open on a blue rose upside down as the shot flips around, paralleling the closing shot of Matt upside down in red. But we have a blue rose here, and we pull back to see it getting picked, and then we pull back even farther to see that we are at Rikers Island and watching Ben Poindexter look out the window. And we see that Ben Poindexter is getting thrown into Gen Pop, even though he should be in isolation. But he's getting thrown in with other prisoners into Gen Pop, and everything in his environment turns blue around him, and he kind of has this perspective of blue. And I kind of like what they're doing, because you can kind of hear like the bees buzzing, which was like in his head from the Netflix Daredevil series, but it's not as prevalent of the bees buzzing, and it kind of like starts to buzz as this like blue tunnel vision comes over his like perspective, and you can just tell like Bullseye in this new blue rendition for this Daredevil Born Again. I really like what they're doing with Bullseye. But they cut away from Dex in prison to the intro. Of course, that giant, great, smashing rock intro. It looks great. And, of course, I love the Daredevil theme music. Even from the Netflix Daredevil into this show, they kind of have similarities between the themes. Really good stuff. But we then cut over after the intro to Fisk and Vanessa by the ports, and she doesn't understand why Fisk would throw everything they've built away. And Fisk says he's not throwing it away, but he's transforming it. And he brought her here to this port building that he's going in to show her something. And I was like, uh-oh, what is she about to show her? Is he about to kill her for what she did last episode? But they were kind of talking about Luca too, and you're like, all right, so it seems like maybe she says like Luca was a child trying to grasp at a throne, and it was tiresome or something like that. It was like boring to see. So maybe she was just tired of Luca's shit, and she worked with Fisk to take him out. I could picture Vanessa messaging Buck and being like, hey, I just told a guy to come by and he wants to take care of Fisk. Make sure you protect him. You know, and he's standing there ready with the gun. You know, so that's definitely a possibility. We then cut over to Heather and Matt at Matt's apartment, and she's not doing too well after killing Muse. But although she seems fine, like she's healed up, she's sitting there, she doesn't have crazy scars on her arm from getting blood drained out of her and shit. Like, I would have pictured her, like, later in this episode, she's wearing like a white dress with her arms out. I was like, if somebody just got their arm cut up, like, would you be just flaunting it? No, you'd probably be wearing sleeves, no? I don't know. I don't think they heal that fast, and we don't necessarily know how long it's been from last episode to this episode, but it doesn't seem like it's been that long. Maybe a couple days, a week maybe. But Matt and her are kind of arguing because she's comparing herself to Muse and Daredevil, and she's like, I can understand why Daredevil's violence would trigger Muse and the violence in myself, right? Like, she's spiraling from her killing, and Matt's like, I know what you mean. She's like, how could you? You weren't there. And he's kind of like, yeah, I wasn't there, right? Like, even though he's Daredevil. But, you know, it's the same old shit with Matt and a woman. And she's like, you know, Muse and Daredevil are so much alike. And he's like, Daredevil's nothing alike with Muse. And, you know, same old type of shit with Matt and women when they're around Matt too long and get to know him too well. It just gets messy. But Matt's like, Muse is a killer. He tried to kill you. Daredevil saved you. And she's like, I saved myself. I didn't need him to save me. And they were both there for themselves. And that's probably true, but Matt was definitely there to save Heather. But at the root of that problem, is he there just to be Daredevil saving? Like, or is he there to protect his loved ones? Would his loved ones need protecting at all if it wasn't for him? I don't know. I think even if he wasn't in love with Heather, I think Muse meeting her has nothing to do with Daredevil or Fisk. And then Fisk having Heather as his, like, marriage counseling, that seems a little too, maybe he, like, is doing that on purpose to you know, get to Matt, like Matt thinks. But I don't think so. I think maybe it's just an odd coincidence that Fisk didn't see coming, that, oh, you're dating my counselor. I hope she's a good one, doesn't spill my secrets. Although he's not really telling any secrets at therapy. But as Matt and Heather are fighting, someone knocks at the door. And who is it? But it is Buck, Fisk's guy. And what does he want? And we then cut over to Fisk bringing Vanessa down to his basement area where they walk past the rabbit in the snowstorm painting with his blood splattered on it from Netflix Daredevil Season 3. And we see that Vanessa sees Adam is in Fisk's cell. And Vanessa says, Adam's not part of us. And Adam's like, I know, please let me go. Fisk is like, shut up. And Fisk is like, I'm sorry, I hear his voice, I see his hands, it's unbearable. And if I cannot be with you, I cannot be. And, you know, it's kind of romantic, it's kind of creepy. You're like, ooh, these two are fucked up. But then we cut back to Buck at Matt's door, and Matt's like, how do you or Fisk know that she's here? And he's like, oh, we like to keep track of our clients or our interesting people in the city. Something along those lines. But then he hands them an invitation to Fisk's gala. And Matt's like, how do you know him? Like, what? Like, and then Matt puts together that Fisk is her client. And we find out the invitation is for a black tie gala that supports Fisk's Red Hook Port Revitalization event. And they, like, start to bicker, and Matt's like, he's trying to use you. Do you not see that? Like, this guy is a bad dude. And she just sees, like, the guy that's trying to save his marriage, you know? But they did put out this black and white ball invitation along with this bullseye with blood splattered in the middle and dripping down, kind of like the Muse blood drips. And I was like, oh my god, what is this episode going to be about? This was like what they put out during the day before the episode aired, and I was sitting there like, oh my god, what is about to happen with that bloody bullseye? But I knew tonight's episode would be the ball episode, so it looks like Heather and Matt are going to be attending Fisk's ball. But they, like, bicker, and Matt's like, I'm not invited, and she's like, it says guest on it, and he's like, fine, I'll come. But, you know, he's sitting there and just saying, like, you know, Fisk is trying to use Heather to get to him. And she's like, I don't think you're doing so well. You know, he kind of sounds crazy because she doesn't know that he's Daredevil, you know what I mean? Like, she's like, what the hell does he want with a blind lawyer? Like, what is your and Fisk's connection? He's like, I can't tell you. But so he says he'll go to the ball with her as he's walking out the door to head to his office. But meanwhile, while we're cutting back and forth between Vanessa and Fisk arguing and talking, and Heather and Matt arguing, because of course they're parallel characters and they're pretty much the same fucking person, just kind of very different. But Matt leaves to go to work, and then meanwhile, poor Adam has been pleading for his life this whole time, like, guys, I'll just leave, I won't say anything about any of you guys, I just will disappear, and I didn't mean for any of this to happen. And Vanessa's like, yeah, I know you didn't. And then she shoots him. I think she shoots him like 3-4 times in the chest, and then one more time in between the eyes, and the last one's violent. And you're like, oh god, Vanessa is such a killer. But she shoots and kills Adam right in front of Fisk, and then they embrace and kind of like make up, and kind of some like sick romantic moment for them as they seem to have made up and things are all good now between them. And you're just like, oh my god, Vanessa and Fisk, dark motherfuckers. Like, whew. Matt at his office goes and talks to his partner Kirsten McDuffie, and she tells him that Poindexter has been released to Gen Pop 2 days ago. And Matt's like, what the hell? Like, she says that Poindexter wants to talk to Matt. And Matt's like, why me? And she's like, I don't know, I didn't ask. And Matt's like, who had him moved? And she's like, I knew you'd want to know that. And Mayor Fisk had him move. So what is Fisk up to, having Bullseye thrown into Gen Pop? He wants Bullseye dead? For what? Something's not adding up here. But at Fisk's office, we find out that Daniel's conversation with BB Urich in the last episode, and getting her to write that the task force really took down Muse and not Daredevil, made it so Fisk is happy with Daniel and promoted him to Deputy Mayor of Communications, and tells him to work closely with the city council, and says he could be doing a lot more. And Fisk says, Daniel's the future of this city. Why would we stand in the way of that? And oof, what is his plans for Daniel here? But Daniel's like, I'll work night and day. I'll burn for you, Fisk. And he's like, yes, I'm sure you would. And I don't know, maybe this is foreshadowing a fiery future for Daniel, but Fisk is trying to make a good man out of him and make him into this new Wesley type of character, because Buck is kind of more like his security guard, you know, than a partner, you know, mentor-mentee type of thing. And I don't think he necessarily wants to be a mentor to Daniel, but he's definitely trying to mold him into a good man for him. And then Fisk is all happy with himself and looks at Sheila, and Sheila's like, you're making him Deputy Mayor of Communications? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, Sheila, Vanessa checked. This desk is Mayor LaGuardia's old desk. And then he like grins and smiles. He's like, this is an old desk. The history in this desk. But now it's mine. He's all happy. And just everything is going right and great for Fisk, and not so much for Matt. And we cut over to Matt and Kirsten talking to this douchey client at their office, and Matt kind of unravels and tells him he's lying and full of shit, and walks out, and Kirsten runs out after him like, what the fuck are you doing? I don't even recognize you right now. What is up? And you can just tell that like the Matt Murdock is fading away as Daredevil becomes more and more prevalent, and he just wants to be the punching, kicking vigilante. He doesn't want to be this nice guy that he's created over the last year when Foggy died. Like, Matt wants to be Daredevil, and he is Daredevil. He needs to be Daredevil. And Matt says to Kirsten, and when they're like talking as he ran out, he's like, listen, we're not serving justice, we're babysitting chaos, which was a great line. And to Matt, it feels like everything we're doing feels useless. And he's not wrong. Everything they do gets undone, and they're not serving justice, they're just babysitting chaos. And after Matt leaves Kirsten, he goes over and he's standing out in the rain outside Josie's bar. Josie sees him standing out there and is like, what are you doing standing out in the rain like a hobo? Come in and have a drink. And she's like happy to see him. She's like, you're a sight for sore eyes. I haven't seen you since the funeral. And she makes a toast. May you always remember to forget the things that make you sad, but never forget the things that make you glad. And they cheer. And then Cherry walks in and comes to talk to Matt. And, you know, they're still kind of beefing from the last time they talked. And he says Fisk is out hunting vigilantes. And Matt thinks they missed something, and Josie comes to make an official toast, and she says, "Oh, we gotta make it official. Foggy's final round." And she brings out like the bottle of the Celebration whiskey or scotch or whatever it is. It's like McKelvey's or McKelvey's, something expensive, you know, that Foggy normally only drinks on Celebration. And Matt's like, he wasn't celebrating that night. Well, that's not what he was drinking. And Josie's like, I know my people. I know what they drink. This is what he was drinking. So then Matt thinks back and he's like, makes the connection like, oh my God, Foggy was celebrating early the night of his case and the night he died. And, you know, they were talking about that Benny case, and he thought for sure he had a win in the bag. So much so, he was celebrating early with Kirsten. So if Foggy knew he was going to win, Matt thinks somebody silenced him, and then Matt runs out. And Josie's like, he didn't use a cane. And Cherry's like, I didn't notice. Right? Like, I would love for Josie to know that he's Daredevil and figure out. But either way. We then see that Matt goes to Poindexter because he needs more answers. And he asks him, was he hired by Fisk to kill Foggy Nelson? And Poindexter kind of avoids the question and says, like, you hear the noise in here? This is the jungle. Is that what you see me as? Just an animal? And he kind of is just like, fuck you, man. Like, what do you want? Like, why did you ask me in here? And Poindexter says, in another life, you would have defended me, because that's what good men do, defend their enemies, right? And he goes, I'm pleading for my life here, counselor. And Matt says, I don't trust you for a second, and slams his face against the table and kind of makes him all bloody, and then calls the guard in. And Matt's like, he started slamming his face into the table himself, and they grab him and like pull him out like, you crazy fuck. And Dex is like, thank you, counselor. And Matt's like, fuck you. And that's not a joke. That's a straight up quote. And I have the clip of fuck you.
Fuck you.
Oh, it's such a good line. Just Matt losing his Matt Murdockness and being the lawyer, but being Daredevil and just smashing friggin' Dex's face into the table. Like, that's not what lawyers do. And this guy was asking for your help, but maybe this was Matt's way of helping him. Maybe he did this on purpose. Or maybe his mistake here is what leads to the rest of this episode. We then cut over to the gala where Daniel is talking to BB, and he kind of apologizes and tells her he's sorry for pushing too hard the other night, and she's like, we're definitely not cool. But he says that she got him promoted to the deputy mayor of communications, and he's like, how the hell did I end up in the inside of this? He goes, I'm not going to stop until, you know, I can't keep running, you know, until somebody makes me stop. And, you know, he's like, look at us, we're on the inside of this gala. And he's kind of like, he thinks BB and him have like this relationship, but we find out later that BB is like playing him. And I was like, BB, what are you falling for this dumbass fool shit for? But no, BB is smarter than she looks. But as BB and Daniel are talking, we cut around the room to see that the Commissioner Gallo is there at the bar. The swordsman, Jack Duquesne, is there. And then we cut over to Heather on the phone, and she's leaving a message for Matt. And she's like, if you weren't gonna come, you could have at least given me a heads up. And she's like all sad and shit when Fisk and Vanessa walk out all happy and stronger than ever. The king and queen of New York. And you're like, oh no. But we then cut back to the prison to see that Poindexter is getting stitched up at the hospital, and his tooth falls out of his head. Or like he kind of, from Matt slamming his face, he kind of is able to force his tooth out of his head, and he ends up spitting the tooth in a guard's eye, right? So blinding a guard, and then grabbing two pairs of scissors and killing the doctor and the guard, as the lights then shift to blue in the inside, and we see this perspective of blue light from Bullseye's perspective, and you're just like, oh wow, the lighting shifts are so good to show that perspective of like Bullseye taking over. And then like the aspect ratio changes when Matt hears something and is really honing in on his senses and shit. Like, really cool ideas that they use just for like camera and filmmaking ideas, and just looks really good. Then back at the gala, Vanessa comes over to talk to Heather, and she says, "Oh, you're alone. Why don't we fix that?" And she goes to introduce her to someone, but then we never see her introduce her to anyone. But we hear Vanessa say she really appreciates how much Heather helped her and Fisk and her husband in their counseling. And Heather's like, "I can't wait for your next session." And Vanessa's like, "I think we figured it out and we got it all worked out. So most likely not going to need Heather's services as a counselor anymore." But then this is when Matt arrives, and Heather is pissed he's late and has been checking out on her physically and emotionally. And we see that Matt is hearing Fisk talking to Jack Duquesne and not listening to Heather at all at this very moment where she's like, "Hey, you're checking out and not listening to me." He's like, checked out, not listening to her. I'm like, oh, Matt, such a bad boyfriend. Especially when Daredevil starts to take over and he just forgets about Matt. Like, he's thinking only about being Daredevil at this current moment, and he's not even really thinking about Heather. But so then we cut into the little office where Fisk is having his conversation with Jack Duquesne, the swordsman, and he calls him out for being the swordsman after asking him for how much he can count on him for. And Jack's like, "I'm not fucking donating any money to you." And he's like, "Okay, swordsman, and I'm sure my task force will pay you a visit for being a vigilante." And Jack stands up and is like, "Is that a threat?" And Fisk kind of grabs him by the shoulder and goes, "No, it's a warning." Exactly like what Jack said to him the last time they saw. But Jack's warning was just that, and Fisk's warning is more of a threat, you know what I mean? And yeah, so then, you know, they walk out and he's like, "Okay, my CFO will be in contact with your company." And a press guy who is disguised as like a server at this party, because there's not supposed to be any press here, and a press guy snaps a picture of Fisk, and Fisk just sicks Powell on him, like, "Powell, take care of him." And Powell takes after him like a friggin' pit bull, and we see Powell is assaulting him and about to, you know, really harm this man, and Commissioner Gallo comes in and tries to stop him and says, "Release that man or I will charge you with assault." And Powell says, "This isn't assault," and then shoves his hand into a grease fryer and then says, "That was assault. And you're not going to try me with shit. In case you haven't noticed, I don't answer to you anymore." And their own police commissioner doesn't have control of his own officers, but the mayor does, and that is dangerous. We then see Daniel and BB talking about how powerful Fisk is. And Daniel, you know, is just like, "Are you seeing that? Everybody in this room either wants to be in that room with him, talking to him, or are scared shitless that he's going to call them into that room." And she's like, and he's like, "Wow, I admire that, so much power." And she's like, "Or it's, you know, too much power. Like, that's not what a mayor should be doing." You know, she kind of sees right through the glow that Daniel sees, and she's like, "Yeah, no, that's a bad man right there." And she goes, "I'm going to go to the ladies' room," but she actually goes and talks to Commissioner Gallo and asks him about Fisk's task force, and did you have any say in that? And he's like, "What do you know about the mayor?" And he ends up saying to her that he has nothing to do with the task force, and that's everything to do with the mayor. And we also learn that BB does know that Fisk was the main suspect in the murder of Ben Urich. So the reason why BB is trying to get close to Fisk is to try and take him down for the murder of her uncle Ben Urich. And I really hope that doesn't wind up BB having the same fate and dying by way of Fisk's hand or Vanessa's hand or Daniel's hand. Either way, it would be because of Fisk. And he would have taken out not one, but 2 Urich family reporters just to protect himself. Oof, what a bad man. But BB, you know, we hear that she knows that he was the main suspect in Ben Urich's murder. And BB's like, "Why do you think I'm here? Not everything I write is in my name." And Gallo says, "I have some files about all the crooked cops in that task force." She goes, "I'd love to see that." And then she turns and looks, and Daniel's looking for her with the drinks. And she's like, "Okay, I gotta go back." And she like kind of starts dancing, and she's like, "Shots!" So she clearly is playing the hell out of Daniel and just playing her cards right, which is much better of a character beat for BB than just being here like Fisk's little lapdog. But Matt says to Heather that Fisk was only working with her to get to him, and she's like, you're crazy. And Matt beelines for Fisk, but as he's about to get up to him, a spotlight comes on, and Fisk and Vanessa have a solo dance, and Matt dances with Heather. And Fisk knows what Matt's up to and kind of sees him across the room, and he's like, what are you looking for here, devil? I told you there would be consequences. And we then see that Buck gets a call that Poindexter escaped, and Dex is there at the gala, and Buck comes over and informs Fisk and Vanessa that Dex escaped, and he's like, don't make a commotion, try and keep it subtle. Vanessa, when she hears that Dex escaped, gets all nervous, and she's like, I have to tell you something, Wilson. And he goes, not here, because he knows that Matt can hear everything. But her heartbeat gets all nervous and starts raising, and Matt puts it all together and is like, that it was Vanessa, and that Vanessa was in charge when Fisk was away, and she hired Poindexter to kill Foggy, and he must know for sure. So he cuts in while they're dancing with Fisk and switches partners, and Matt starts dancing with Vanessa, and Fisk has to dance with Heather. And I was like, uh-oh, that's not good. But I loved this little clip of like Matt saying he's dangerous, and then we just see Fisk like dancing.
You're not making any sense.
Heather, he is a monster. You're not safe. No one is safe until this is done. And I'm not running anymore.
He's like, he's a monster. You're not safe. And Fisk is just dancing, blowing on his fingers and like doing like jazz hands. I was like, what are they doing? What is him and Vanessa talking about right here? But I loved it. So funny. There was little moments in this gala that were like equal part funny that I was like, that's hilarious. And just like equal parts like tense and like good writing, and then it just keeps getting more and more tense, and you're just like, ooh boy, keep it rolling, baby. I then have a clip here of Matt dancing with Vanessa and him talking to her, and what Fisk is saying to Heather while they're dancing.
You know, it's been said that keeping secrets can make us sick. You see, I know it was you. I just don't know why. What about your husband? Does he know? Does he know you had Foggy killed?
Does Heather know you're Daredevil?
Have you ever wondered why Mr. Murdock has a thing for vigilantes, Doctor? You will pay for what you did.
You need to relax.
Fisk says to Heather in that clip, secrets, they can make us sick. And, you know, he's like, do you ever wonder why Mr. Murdock always has such a fascination with vigilantes? And, you know, pretty much Fisk is about to tell Heather straight up that he's Daredevil, and he doesn't even care, because he's got Vanessa in his grasp, and he's like, listen, I know it was you, but does your husband know that you had Foggy killed? And she kind of goes, does your girlfriend know that you're Daredevil? And kind of like fluffs his tie for him. I was like, oh, Vanessa's such a sassy little bitch right now. But she definitely knows that Matt is Daredevil. But then we see Matt hears the gun loading, and the perspective and the aspect ratio changes, and such a good shot. But I have the rest of the clip here too, to see what Bullseye does. Like, who does Bullseye shoot at? He's loading. Who's he gonna shoot? This is the rest of this clip. And that's where this episode goes to the credits. Are you kidding me? Matt's like, listen, I know you had Foggy killed, to Vanessa, and Vanessa's like, does she know you're Daredevil? And then he hears the gun load, and he just like, you know, we see the lighting perspective shift for Bullseye, and you see the blue lights behind him, and he's like in a security guard costume. He had a fork from like the kitchen he had killed the other security guard with. You can see in the background of that picture. But then he takes aim and fires at Fisk. And why does he want to kill Fisk? Like, I don't know. But either way, Matt jumps in front of him, and we see Matt's blood, which it looks like maybe it goes right through his shoulder, so Matt should be alright. But Matt gets shot, saving Fisk, and Matt's blood splatters all over Fisk's white suit, just like Fisk's blood splattered all over his Rabbit in the Snowstorm painting. And I was like, oh my god, what a good shot. But then Fisk just kind of goes, ugh, and just drops him, which I thought was hilarious. I was like, oh my god, he just dropped him on the floor. But then we get these wild shots, man, of everybody bolting and everybody running out. And Matt's just sitting there bleeding, and we just hear his own heartbeat now as we're looking down on him the same way that we were looking down on Foggy Nelson out in the street. And Karen holding his chest as Heather's holding Matt's chest. And then we get shots of like everyone's feet as they're on the floor with him shot, as everyone is just, you know, panicking and scurrying out of the gala, and you know, they're cutting around to everybody, and Fisk is grabbing Vanessa to take off, and then it cuts to this red spotlight above Matt, and he's just like, oh god, you know, and then it's got this crazy song, I see the lightning and thunder, but it's more like, I see the light, you're dying, you know, trying to play into that Matt Murdock might be dying here, but you know there's a season 2, you know there's a finale. Matt's not dying in the episode 8, right? Like, come on. But we end on a upside down shot of Matt on the floor bathed in red light, just like the upside down shot of the rose in blue light that we started the episode on. So we started with upside down Bullseye, now we end on upside down Matt, you know, and it's got that nice little parallel to it filmmaking wise. And it ends almost like a parallel to the start of the season with Matt bloody shot on the ground from Bullseye instead of Foggy. And I immediately, right, like in that scene, he's like, you killed Foggy, and Vanessa says, you need to relax. And immediately she said that, I went, Foggy's alive! He's alive! I knew he was alive! But she doesn't confirm it. But why would Matt relax when his best friend got shot and killed by her? Unless she's telling him to relax because he's not really dead. Foggy's alive. I don't know if we'll figure it out in the finale of next week, but I think Foggy's alive. But man, that's so crazy. Dex is now on the loose. Matt is like dying. And Fisk is like back to Kingpin level of power. And he's got his Vanessa back. And Matt just took a bullet for Fisk is where we head into next week. What? What a penultimate episode. What an episode 8. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. The Bullseye stuff. I feel like, you know, Muse could have been the villain for this season, but I don't know where we're heading into the finale episode. But episode 8 is a really, really good one. Although I don't really love how Matt's treating Heather, but that is what it is. You know what I mean? It's gonna have to be what it is. But the filmmaking, the perspective changing, the lighting in this episode, there were so many really, really great elements to this episode, and I can't wait to talk more about it with you guys next week. And if you guys want to talk more Daredevil, you can message me on my other social medias, links down in the description below. Big Cam, 2Gs in the Big, pretty much anywhere. You can check me out, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Twitter. I think there's maybe another one out there. Definitely not Facebook. I don't want to talk to old people on Facebook. That's not my place. But mostly YouTube. If you comment down below, I get back to all my comments. And thank you guys so much. If you've made it this far in the video, I really, really appreciate you guys. And if you could, like this video, comment below, hit that bell so you don't miss future videos and you get the notifications. And make sure you subscribe if you're new. Thank you guys once again. My name's Big Cam, and I will see you beautiful people in the next one. Peace.